Welcome. We are now in sophomore English, and our objective for the hour is to introduce the great writer Shakespeare. Now, I use that adjective great intentionally, and I'm going to come back to it. Here's the deal. If you somehow built a time machine, and you got in that thing and went back in time to 1600 and landed in London, England, 1600, and you walked up to the cat whose name is William Shakespeare, there's a lot of debate that you'd even be able to find him, because there's debate about who this guy was and what we know about him. Pretty much everything we know about this guy you could put on a small index card, this Shakespeare cat. But let's just imagine you could find him and you walk up to him and you say to him what, by the way, is absolutely the truth in 2013. You were to say to him, dude, in 2013 in the United States and the rest of the world, you are considered the greatest writer of all time. By the way, there's no debate about that. Nobody debates that fact. Shakespeare is considered the greatest writer in any language of all time. Nobody debates that, really. I mean, any of the academics, nobody really debates that fact. If you were to say that to him, he would say two things to you right away. One, what dope are you on? And two, where did you get it so I can get it too? Right away, it's really important that you point out for your notes what is an absolute certainty. And it is this. At his death, Shakespeare had no idea that by 2013, there would be some crazy English teacher in room 303 in high school talking about the greatest writer in the history of the world is William Shakespeare. Absolutely no way. Not only did Shakespeare not believe it, nobody else around him believed it either, for that matter. There wasn't anybody that was ready to accord that level of greatness to this guy. Okay? How do we know that? Well, I'll give you one example of that. The collection of his plays, what we call his canon. Now, not the cannon you shoot gunpowder and a ball out of, but a C-A-N-O-N, canon. His canon, collected body of works, that doesn't even happen until 60 years after he's dead. So, for example, it'd be kind of like this. You watch on television a show that maybe you like, I don't know, Walking Dead, okay? So you like this show, Walking Dead, okay? So you go into the bookstore, maybe like Barnes & Noble in Billings. You go into the bookstore and you say, hey, last night I was watching an episode of Walking Dead. I'd like to read it. The lady at the counter would say to you, honey, you don't understand something. Let me explain something about TV. You don't read Walking Dead. You watch it. And you were to say, no, I get it. I watched it, but now I want to read it. The lady would again say to you, you don't understand. We don't sell the script for Walking Dead so you can read it, okay? Now, that's not to say there is no script for Walking Dead. There are a lot of high-paid writers who are writing that stuff, those writers, and we call that a script. But you can't buy that and read that unless, of course, there's some reason for it way after the fact. Let's all study together the scripts of Walking Dead, for example, if you're going to writing school, screenwriting school, or something like that. But normally, let's just say it this way, Walking Dead you watch, you don't read. Shakespeare never published his stuff to be read. That is huge. It's important for you to right away to understand Shakespeare never imagined that you would read Romeo and Juliet. It would, for him, be kind of like going to a concert where music is about to be played, and the lead singer of the band comes out and turns all the lights on in the arena and starts passing out all the lyrics to the song, where he would say, tonight I'm not going to sing this stuff to you, we're just going to read it. Everybody would be like, what do you mean we're going to read it? I thought we were here to be entertained with a concert. No, we're going to read it. That way we can understand it better. Most people would say, yeah, that's not for me. Shakespeare would have a real problem with the fact that for most of you, you will read Julius Caesar, the play, long before you would ever watch it. Okay? Shakespeare wasn't about fame. What was he about? Dollars. Money. That's what he was about. Now, I've been playing this game for a number of years, and at some point this example isn't going to work anymore. And I was saying this to my seniors the other day, and now I'll say it to you. And I'll try it now one more time, and we'll just see. But like I said, at some point, this example is going to fall flat on its face, and I'll say, well, I guess I've been doing this too long, and I have to find another example. Let's just play this game, and you watch real quickly. Real interesting cultural phenomenon. All right, we're all going to get to be sociologists for just a split second. How many of you have seen some or all of a Jackie Chan film? Raise your hand. Okay, now I will say it out loud. That pretty much is all of us. Okay, so now I'm going to ask a really intriguing question. Do you think this is like somehow a special enclave of Jackie Chan fans that live in the mountains of the Bighorns, and at nights they sit around watching Jackie Chan films? Or do you have a sense? I'm not going to say a word. I'm not going to say a word. Or do you have a sense that if I were to go to Cherry Creek in Denver and ask the same question, a bunch of sophomores, they'd all raise their hand? Or if I were to go to a bunch of high school students in Okinawa at Okisho High School, and I ask them this question, which I have, guess what? They all raise their hand. Or if, for example, you go to anywhere in China and, you know, all over the world, people have watched Jackie Chan films. Now I'm going to ask the second question. We'll just see how this one works, okay? How many of you have watched the same Jackie Chan film more than one time? Raise your hand. And again, all the hands pretty much go up. Now, what, Mr. Armentrout? Those Jackie Chan plot lines are just so complicated. You got to watch them a second time to make sure you No, we're pretty much aware that. Let's say it out loud now. Jackie Chan followed the lead of Shakespeare. It's this simple. If you want to make money, the way you make money in the entertainment industry is to get them to come back again and again and again. Are you ready for this? Shakespeare invented that idea. It's Shakespeare who invented that idea. He wrote stuff that would be performed that he knew people would come back to again and again and again. That's how he made his money. You don't make your money if you're Shakespeare by one performance of a play, because the theaters where he produced these plays were not that big. So you didn't get that many people. But if you got them coming back day after day after day, then you could maybe make some bank. We know he made enough money that he's able to afford two places to live, one in London and one in a little town called Stratford-on-Avon. So we know that he must have done something pretty well in terms of just getting money. Okay? Now, wait a minute. I said something about getting them to come back. So in your notes now, you want to have a little special place where you talk about Shakespeare's audience. Because Shakespeare's genius is making money. His audience is the key. He knows his audience in the same way, by the way, that Jackie Chan knows his audience. Okay? And then he gives his audience, Shakespeare, what his audience wants. And in the process, he makes money. Now, who is this audience? Well, okay, to tell you the answer to that, I got to tell you about Shakespeare's time period. What I'm about to tell you, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this, and then some of you are going to be grossed out by this. But what I'm about to tell you is true. First of all, the town of London. We should visit it. Okay, so you know, that's the next conversation. If you're interested in a trip to Vienna with me, why not stop off in London for a few days? I think that would make sense.
Why not? You can go see something in the theater.
Okay, so we will. So there you go.
Fish and chips.
Yeah, that's right. You got me on that. Les Mis is showing in London on the stage. That's right. So, London is an interesting town. It's divided. Are you ready for this? It's divided by a river called the River Thames. Now, it's said Thames. When you look at the spelling, T-H-A-M-E-S, you think you should pronounce it Thames, but it's actually the River Thames. Okay, and this river divides London. On one side of London is where all the business work is done and everybody lives. On the other side of town, in 1600. On the other side of the town is, I'm going to use the PG-13 version here, it's the entertainment district. Okay, can I just leave it at that? On the other side of the river is the entertainment district, you see. Okay, and there's all kinds of things that happen over there. One of the things that happens over there happens in a circular building that looks kind of like an old Dallas Cowboy football stadium. Now, for those of you who don't know about Irving Stadium and Dallas Cowboys, you know, that stadium that was built there in Irving, it was a circular stadium with a roof that was open. I mean, back in the day, they used to say that's because God had to watch his team play on Sundays. They don't say that anymore. I'm sorry. They don't say that anymore. But they used to say that, okay? So you got this circular building. If you walked inside this building, there would be seats, and then there would be like a sawdust floor. And there would be like this pole sticking out the ground, quite pretty high, post. And then when everybody showed up, they would bring into this arena a bear who's muzzled. Now this bear has been stuck in a tight cage, confined, and he's been tortured. He's been poked with sticks and stuff and not fed. And you know you can take any animal and make them really mean if you want by doing this. When this bear is brought out, this bear is wicked mean. They will chain his neck to the post with a chain. They'll take the muzzle off. And everybody runs out of the arena, center. Then, are you ready for this? From down around the bottom, they raise the cage doors, and out come dogs. These dogs have been trained to fight and kill this bear. And what will then happen for the next hour or two? People are paying money to watch these dogs rip this bear up. Of course, this bear's going to get a lot of them dogs before he finally goes down. And the dogs will kind of attack as a pack so that they'll jump onto the back of the bear to begin biting off huge chunks of flesh, swinging this blood all over the spectators. Now, question real quick, just to pause here.
Splash zone.
Where? That's right, splash zone. But let's beg a question here. Where do you think the most expensive seats in the house are? Are they way up high, you know, so you don't get like the blood on you? Are they? Well, yeah. I mean, for those of you saying, "Oh, I can't believe what barbaric people they are." Well, think of it this way: if you go to a World Federation wrestling event down in Denver, where are the most expensive seats? Are they way up high, or are they right there ringside? That's right, where you get all that wretchedness, you know, and you get to see it all. That's right. But my story is only half done, and we know there's some tragic things that happen in this. What's called, for your notes, bear baiting. That's what they call this entertainment. Number one form of entertainment. No kidding. Bear baiting. People would pay money. I kid you not. People would pay money to watch some bear get his throat ripped out by dogs. Okay. By the way, they also love dog fighting as well in the pits. This was a very popular form of entertainment. But my story's only half done. Are you ready for this? Now I want to make a point that I want to drive home to you sophomores. If you don't understand what I'm saying now, you do not understand Shakespeare. Okay, so follow. The same people would walk out of this little bear baiting arena, walk down the street 200 yards to another arena, which looked very similar. It was circular, had no roof. And on the placard of the sign outside of this structure, they would see that there was a performance of Romeo and Juliet. The same people with the blood on their face, those people would go in and watch Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. The same people with the blood on their face. Now, why do I make that distinction? Because think of it today. If you didn't know, for example, DeBolt back there, and I were to ask him out loud, dude, what are you going to do next weekend? And he were to say, oh, I'm very excited. Myself and several of my colleagues have tickets to drive down to Denver to go and watch a performance of Shakespeare's Tempest. I'm quite excited. If you didn't know DeBolt, right, and you heard him say that, you would have a certain kind of view of him as being somebody who goes to plays where everyone dresses up with bow ties and drinks champagne in between the acts, you know, that kind of thing. On the other hand, if you didn't know DeBolt, and I were to ask him what he's doing this weekend, he would say, oh, dude, I'm way jazzed. Me and my pals, we all got tickets to go down to Denver, and we're going to watch a World Federation event where they got this huge cage, and they're going to put 20 guys inside. The last guy standing gets $5 million. It's going to be awesome. They're just going to beat the ever-living snot out of each other. And I got ringside tickets. Again, if you didn't know DeBolt, you would have a different view of him, right? By virtue of him saying, I'm going to go to a World Federation event. It's going to be great, this wrestling stuff. Shakespeare's audience did not have this distinction, and this is fundamentally important to understanding Shakespeare. Several years ago, for example, Worland High School, believe it or not, theater program actually put on stage a performance of Shakespeare's Macbeth. And I always love it when I go to performances of Macbeth. I think last fall, there was a performance of Shakespeare's Macbeth done by the Montana Company. I'm always interested to watch for two reasons. One, I'm always interested in the ways in which people watch the plays of Shakespeare when they don't know the plays of Shakespeare. So, for example, maybe some of you showed up at the performance. You didn't know what a Macbeth was. You walked in, you just watched. I'm always interested to kind of watch to see how long it takes viewers to kind of figure out what's going on. But I'm really intrigued, and I was really intrigued when Warland did this. I went every night, so that after the event, I could walk out with people, and every single night, I heard people say something like the following: you know, I actually understood what was going on. That's what they said. You know, I actually understood what was going on. Like they were shocked that they got it. Okay? The point I want to make is this. The audience who shows up for Shakespeare's plays got it. They got it so well, they went back again and again, which is why he made his money. He didn't write Romeo and Juliet to be famous. He wrote Romeo and Juliet because people would come back and watch it over and over again. The people who love to watch bears getting jacked up. Of course, if you'll think about it, that will make some sense the minute we start to talk about Shakespeare's duplicitous or two-part audience. Let's talk about it now. Physically, within the Globe Theater, that structure that he created to perform these plays, within the Globe Theater itself, there's two different parts where audiences can go. The first audience is the most important one. It's what we call the groundlings, or the pit audience. These are individuals who cannot afford tickets to sit. So they literally stand in front of the stage. Now, I am not going to say that I know this from first-hand knowledge, but I have been told that when you go to certain rock concerts, if you stand in front of the stage instead of sitting high up, certain kinds of things happen down there on the floor. Again, I'm not saying I know this from personal experience, but I have been told. I've been told. Okay, I've been told. Shakespeare's pit audience comes for really two reasons. Are you ready for this? They come for lots of blood and guts. They like blood and guts. Hello. They're the ones who like to watch the bear getting its throat ripped out. Got me? And they also like dirty sex jokes and lots of profanity. They love it. They love it. Well, you already know this, though. Wait a second. You studied last year Romeo and Juliet. Do you remember how that play begins? The very opening scene of the play ends up with what happening? When we see Romeo for the very first time, he comes on the stage. And we always want to pay attention the very first time our lead actor speaks. When Romeo comes on stage for the very first time, he walks on the stage and he looks down and he points at what? On the floor. Does anybody remember? What's he point to? He points to a pool of blood. He points to a pool of blood. And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Blood? Well, no, wait a minute. Why is there blood on the stage? How does Romeo and Juliet the play open? It opens with a couple of a guy and a girl kissing, and this is a play about love, right? So it's got to be, no. How does the play start? It starts with a fight, doesn't it? It starts with a fight so bad that there's blood on the stage, right? But wait a minute. Why is there fighting at the beginning of the play, Miss Kennedy? Now, Miss Kennedy did it just now. Yeah, she just doesn't understand that, okay? If she better understood that, she wouldn't, out of respect to Mr. McGee, she wouldn't make that hand gesture. Hey, think of it this way. How about this? There's this buzz about a new performance that's about to happen from our high school drama program. Everybody comes to the middle school theater, including all the big shots of the community, the mayor, everybody. Out onto the stage walks Mr. Miller as our actor. And he immediately starts giving the hand gesture that we today call affectionately flipping someone off or flipping the bird. Of course, hand gesture means the F word, right? Imagine if Mr. Miller were to just walk out and start doing this to the audience. How quickly would that play be allowed to continue? Yeah, not so much, right? I mean, you probably got a sense that probably that play's going to get shut down real quick. Are you ready for this? Shakespeare was the first Steve Spielberg. He loved this stuff. First Steve Spielberg. He loved special effects. So, for example, he knows there's going to be this fight scene. He'll take the the stomach lining of a goat, and he'll fill it with blood. He'll put it up underneath the shirt, so that when the guy gets stabbed, the blood goes everywhere. Love this stuff. Love this stuff. Shakespeare's audience loved it too. When we study in seniors, when we study the play Hamlet, it's a very famous scene that Hamlet speaks with a skull. Shakespeare actually had a real skull that he used that sometimes rolled too far across the stage and fell out into the groundling audience. They had to pick it up and set it back on the stage. And it was a real human skull. He loved this stuff because his audience loved this stuff, all right? The dirty sex jokes, well, that, you know, that kind of stuff also. I mean, pardon me for a moment.
Please, probably shouldn't continue.
No worries. You bet. You're face-to-face or on the phone. You bet. Miss Veras, Miss Fry apparently is asking for you. The word, can I say it this way? The word that is the F word of 1600 is not the F word of today. And it ends up in almost all of Shakespeare's plays. Of course, our F word today is changing. If you listen to pop culture at all, you know, in the music of pop culture, it always is constantly changing. Shakespeare loves to push the boundaries, which is why they keep shutting down his theater. The Puritans, they kept shutting it down. They didn't like the fact, think about it. I mean, I'm sure you were told this, but there aren't any female actresses on the stage in 1600. So that means all of the lines that Juliet speaks are actually spoken by a young man. So it's a guy dressed up like a girl speaking the lines of Juliet to another guy. The Groundlings loved this stuff. They would go intentionally to make fun of the poor young guys who got stuck playing girl parts. And of course, all of the lines then carry double and sometimes triple entente sexual meanings. Shakespeare's playing that game all the time, and his Groundlings love it. They love it. Of course, Shakespeare himself loves his villains. And so he would actually sell eggs. He would have eggs launched at his villains. And he has some wicked villains. In the play Othello, when Iago, for example, is about to ever live and jack his best friend Iago, he will actually turn to the audience. He'll speak directly to the audience right before, and you go, what? To the audience. What? You think I'm a bad guy? He's speaking to the audience. He's not talking to anybody on stage. He goes, you think I'm a bad guy? You just wait. You got no idea how bad I'm about to be. Watch how I jack this guy. Just watch me. And then he'll go back to acting again in the play. Shakespeare wrote that stuff in because he knew his pit audience loved nasty villains. They loved to be able to kind of yell at them and throw stuff at them and that kind of thing. His best actors were the ones who could recite their lines as the villain and, you know, duck and that kind of thing. But let's point out something. If Shakespeare was nothing more than crude, which he was, and kind of gross, which he really was, if that's all that he was, then, you know, that mom who showed up at my door for parent-teachers, you know, did one of these things, Mr. McGee, I need to talk with you, you know. Why aren't you teaching these kids some really good writing? And I'm like, I'm always like, yeah, like what? And she, like Shakespeare. Now I'm really like, oh, really? So Shakespeare is wholesome and, yeah, what? Well, you know, play like maybe Romeo and Juliet, you know, and I don't have the courage to explain that the opening sequence, even when Leonardo DiCaprio made his adaptation film version of Romeo and Juliet, stay with me. They could not use the opening 30 lines of the play. You can't use it. The reason you can't use it is it's so extremely violent. And it's so unsettling. Even today, you make that film on stage. You normally edit out the first 30 lines of that play. Now, for those of you that didn't look very closely at that, you may want to go back and look really closely at that. It's very unsettling. But let's point out something for your notes as we end. And you'll need this in your notes. Shakespeare has a second audience that he writes to. It's what we will call the thinking audience. And this audience will come to hear some of the greatest questions asked and sometimes answered. Well, you already know this, don't you? Because when Romeo comes out onto the stage and he looks at that pool of blood, he says about that pool of blood, I don't want to hear about why that pool of blood is here. I already know about it. There is something to do with hate here. We know that. Capulets hate Montagues. But he said there's a lot more to do with love. He will point at the pool of blood. And he'll say, what caused this wasn't hate. What caused this was love. Now that's interesting. And anybody watching this play who's of the thinking audience will say, whoa, 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 that's really fascinating because this play is kind of about how love causes blood as much as hate causes blood. The thinking audience then is the second audience for Shakespeare. Now to finish the lecture, the key to Shakespeare is simply this. He was able to entertain both audiences at the same time. Both audiences at the same time. The key to understanding and appreciating Shakespeare is to witness, to watch how he does this over and over again. He will be able to entertain both the thinking audience and the pit audience at the same time. Shakespeare wrote 3 kinds of plays. He wrote tragedies, he wrote comedies, and he wrote history plays. Okay? We will define tomorrow all 3. And then we will begin looking at one of his plays, Julius Caesar, okay, as what we will call a history tragedy play. All right? Come back tomorrow, and it will help you if you have